Hello, and welcome to WANA Pod by WANA Learning, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to learn, grow, and stay successful in our ever-evolving world. I'm your host, Nisa Burrell, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this journey. In today's episode, I am thrilled to welcome Shrutika Shah, the visionary mind behind Varta Creative Studio. As a founder and creative director, Shrutika has been championing visual sophistication with strategic depth, helping businesses to articulate their voice and connect authentically with their audiences. So today we're going to be exploring what inspired her to become an entrepreneur and start Varta, and how she balances that creativity with commerce. So let's dive in. Shrutika, first of all, thank you for joining us and for sharing your entrepreneurial story. I really want to start at the beginning. So, what inspired you to launch Varta Creative Studio, and what does Varta mean to you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It is brilliant to actually get to talk about this. But right at the beginning, the origin story really starts with classic rejection as redirection kind of story. I was working in media for about 4.5 years, I think. But my heart was always in branding. I graduated as a designer in 2015, which is 10 years ago as of this July, and always wanted to be in branding. Never I hated advertising and media with a passion, because I always know it was very cutthroat. You don't really get to work with clients over a long period of time, whereas branding was something you do actually get to have that kind of one-on-one time with your clients. But then classic UK job market, you just take the first job that you kind of get, and I ended up in media for a very, very long time. And then just finding your way back from where you are and where you actually want to be was really, really difficult, especially in an industry like design, which is really broad. If you want to change disciplines, you kind of have to start at the beginning all over again. It's really hard to even get that first break. um for some reason, the industry is quite gate kept. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but it's you need like 5 years of experience before your first job, and it's really, very frustrating. And I think that's still the trend even now, if I'm being honest. But yeah, it was just difficult finding my first break in branding. And then I was sat at my desk at work one afternoon, and I had just gotten my last rejection, which incidentally was for a job I interviewed for on my birthday. I took my birthday off and went for an interview, and my dad was like, "Look at you! I'm so proud of you." And I was so intent on getting that job, and then I got that rejection that morning, and I had a little bit of a weep while I was at lunch, and I came back to my desk, and I was just looking at all this work that I was supposed to do. And don't get me wrong, I did like the work I was doing. I loved my team. It wasn't even really about that. I think it was just about outgrowing the place where I was at. I wasn't learning anything new, and I was still very early on in my career to just get stagnated at one place. And then I was looking at this company in America started by these two women, and it was a branding agency that they had started together. And I looked at their brand and their business and the kind of clients they were working with, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And why am I not just doing it myself? Like, what's stopping me from launching my own business? And yeah, and then I think as soon as I left work that day, I went and rang my sister, who is also a business owner. And I rang her and I was like, hey, like, I'm thinking I'm just going to start my own company. And she's like, cool, do it. And I really thought she's going to laugh in my face. And she didn't. And she was very much like, no, I think you can do it. And I'm like, I don't know anything about running a business. Like, I'm really terrible with numbers. I don't know how to, at that point, I didn't even really know how to talk to clients, because none of my jobs at the time were client facing. And she was just like, you learn. That's the best way to learn. Like, there is no school you can attend to start a business. There is no such thing. There really should be, but there isn't. You just have to learn on the job, and just as how you've learned to do your job while you've been at work, you will learn how to do a business as well. And that's really what got me started. And then the name actually has been derived from my own roots. So I am a Gujarati. I'm natively Gujarati, like it's a region in India, and it's also one of the many languages that are spoken in that country. And Varta is actually a word that means story in Gujarati. So it tied in really well with what I wanted to do, which was storytelling through design and branding. And because the ethos of the whole company is storytelling, but in a way that will actually help businesses connect with their audience. And then they don't have to try very hard to sell their services. It just happens organically through emotive messaging and just stories that people want to bookmark. I think I launched at the end of 2019, which was really cool because it was right before COVID. So I got to actually build my business during a time where the world was really resetting and finding its own way back to a place where I don't think any of us really knew how to navigate COVID, and neither did businesses. And businesses really struggled, obviously, during that time. But the one good thing that happened at the time was businesses got that time to be like, oh, we can't work. So let's just invest in ourselves. And for that first year, actually, that really helped my business because people found time to brand themselves, which they probably wouldn't have got outside of COVID. So yeah, very thankful and grateful, and grateful I got to come out on the other side of COVID.
You recognize that you weren't where you want to be, and you're on that path where you're thinking, well, I could stay here, but actually, is that gonna give me the life that I want? Is that gonna give me the
Sure.
value in what I do? So you asking yourself, what is stopping you, and having that support in your case, your sister, that has literally said, well, go for it. What have you got to lose? For some people, that's one of the hardest hurdles, isn't it? Is actually
Yeah,
having somebody that's going to believe in you
absolutely.
enough that you think, oh, I've got the confidence to do this.
I was very privileged to have very, very supportive family and friends who literally none of them laughed when I said I'm starting a business. All of them were 100% on board. And it really does take a village. I was working for myself. I'm still working for myself. I'm pretty much a solo team still. But it still takes a village of your friends and family really rallying behind you to be like, oh yeah, I know somebody who can do this, and yeah, you can absolutely do that. And on days you really question yourself, to have that kind of people around you that will believe in you when you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you've touched on is this idea of it takes a village. You need other people, you need people to kind of back you, but also those of us that run our own businesses know it's your network. Your network is worth its weight in gold, really. So being an entrepreneur really does mean you've got to wear many hats. Like
Yeah.
you can't just be fantastic operational, you need to have the leadership vision. You need to be able to actually balance, in your case, creative with commercials,
Mhm.
particularly when you're running like a brand studio like yourself. So how do you balance those aspects of being both creative but also being commercially aware?
Again, it's something I learned to do on the job. Like it wasn't when I was working full time, my only job was to do my creative work. There was nothing outside of my client work that I needed to sort of do. I didn't have to, think about my pay. I didn't have to think about my accounts. I didn't have to think about my taxes. I didn't even really have to think about my commute because it was all just sort of like planned out for me. I just had to take the train and get into work. Whereas now it really does take a different level of planning. Like it's got its pros and cons, right? Running your own business where you feel like you're giving yourself the gift of time, and then you suddenly realize you're working 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. So because there's a lot more to it than just client work. You have to find time to market, you have to find time to network, you have to find time for admin, and then life admin, you have to actually find time for your own personal admin as well. Like you have to recognize very early on what you are comfortable doing yourself and learning the art of delegation. I didn't do that a lot. There were certain things straight off the bat that I did straight away, and I think I got that absolutely right. Was delegating things like accounting, taxes. I was like, you know what? Don't even want to get into that landmine of doing that myself. Yes, it's an investment. It's a cost. It's an added cost to my business to delegate, but why not? If it's going to help me find time to actually make the money, then it's going to help pay for itself. Try not to make everything your job, because as soon as you start doing that, you're going to pigeonhole yourself into not having any time at all. And trying to think of ways I can delegate little parts of my job. Social media, again, it's something you like, not everybody has the mind space to do it. I certainly don't. But again, it's recognizing what you're good at and then using that as your main focus. Everything else, delegate straight off the bat. And I promise you that cost will pay for itself. because you will actually be doing things that will make you the money.
What I find quite interesting is when you speak to other business owners who are still determined to do those things themselves, you wouldn't question paying a couple of £1,000 for a new laptop if you needed a new laptop.
Yeah.
You wouldn't question buying software, which is like plus £1,000. You wouldn't question, your professional memberships or your insurance costs. But why are you not paying for an accountant when you are not an accountant yourself? Like these sort of things I find daft because we have our strengths. Like we all know our own space, we all know our own like worlds, and we know the value we bring as professionals.
Yeah,
That same courtesy and respect and thought process to like others around you, because it's just going to make your life easier. So
absolutely.
you help businesses articulate their identity and their purpose. So what are some common challenges that you've seen businesses face when they're trying to find and define their brand voice?
The one that stands out the most is just a lack of clarity. A lot of brands don't have a clear picture of who they're speaking to. And
Mm.
then that kind of leads to like of messaging, not having an ideal audience in mind. Like the way I explain it, right, is you have to think of your own business as a person, as an individual entity. It's separate from you, but just as you have your own network of family and friends, you might appeal to some people, you might not appeal to some people. Your business is the same thing. It's important that you don't think of it as something that needs to appeal to everybody. Because as soon as you start doing that, you lose clarity on who you should be speaking to and who is actually a worthwhile connection for your business. And then you start getting lost in the voices of everyday entrepreneurs and other businesses that might be doing something similar or doing absolutely the same thing. And then the other thing that I see a lot happening with clients is the temptation to copy the competition.
Mm.
Oh, they sound professional. Oh, they sound very modern. Oh, they look very luxury. And then you just start blending in because you're doing exactly what they're doing. And that's the wrong way to do it. It's the wrong way to approach your business because then how are you standing out? How are you using your differences to actually um, you know, appeal to the right people again? So like I'll give you an example. I work a lot with healthcare clients and generally it's a very oh, we have to look very traditionally clinical or we have to look traditionally modern. And, the ethos is all about fitting into that one box of what you would expect, like a dental or a healthcare like business to look like. And then I had one of these clients that during our very early workshops, it became very clear what their edge was. Like they were trying to look at dentistry specifically as artistry. It was very much about, it should be very artistic. It should be very aesthetic. Dentistry is about it actually is about making your smile look very pretty. So how can we combine dentistry, the science, with the artistry of actually making people feel beautiful? And we based a whole brand around it. And actually, it's not launched yet. We're in the process of launching it right now. But that brand is actually so out there with what you would expect a traditional dental brand to look like that I'm actually a little bit nervous about how it's going to be received. But I actually think it's going to do really, really well because, again, it's standing out. It's so different from the usual um, sort of brands that you would see when it comes to that industry. That I really think it's going to do well because it's going to build intrigue, it's going to build curiosity. And at the end of the day, what I always tell my clients is that there's no such thing as bad press when it comes to branding. It as long as it's getting people's attention, you will actually stand out really, really well. Obviously, for the right reasons. You have to like stand out for the right reasons. But the best way to do that is to get somebody who understands that. Most times, founders are so close to their own business that they don't even recognize what makes them different. Like
Mhm.
they start thinking it's very normal to feel the way they do about their business, or what they're doing is very normal, and other people are also doing it. Whereas most times it's actually not. What makes you unique is the way you approach your own business. And once you start getting other people's perspectives on it, you'll start to notice that, oh, what I'm doing is actually quite out there. Like it's not as conventional as I think in my own head it is. So if you get more outside perspectives in, you'll start to notice that the details you thought were very common or very normal, they're actually the things that make you so unique. And then you can actually use that to your advantage.
That's great. Really, really useful tips. And I think, as you say, sometimes it just needs an outside view that
Yeah.
can see a bigger picture or see things that you haven't made connections with. It's natural that that's going to evolve over time, just like we as humans do. We go on
Yeah.
that journey. So, has your own brand, either your personal brand or your professional brand, evolved over time? And what's been the biggest shift you've seen as a founder?
I don't think foundationally the brand has changed a lot. Like the Varta brand has always had the same ethos, which is to tell great stories through good design. What has evolved though is my own approach. I think at first there was a lot of voices and a lot of loud voices actually telling me to find your niche, and you really need to like find your niche and just really dial down into that, and because then you can start working with a certain type of people or certain type of businesses. But what I've realized that great stories don't exist just in one category. And yeah, of course, that advice works really, really well for certain people, is to find your niche. Yeah, absolutely. And I actually tell my clients that quite often, is that what is your specialty? What is your expertise? What is your niche? But for me personally, I think some of my favorite projects have been ones that I didn't think about taking in the beginning. Like I would have been like, ah, like I don't really want to take this on. But it actually stretched me creatively, and it actually introduced me to a whole bunch of new industries that I wouldn't have thought about getting into. Like one of the main ones being healthcare. So actually staying open and being able to work across sectors, it helped keep my work very fresh. It helped keep my creativity very fresh. It helped me connect with new people, building a network of fascinating people. And that's where you learn the best stories, is people. People are the best stories. Like that's the best way to get some inspiration. And sometimes your best niche isn't a sector or like a speciality. I think it's the quality and the depth of the stories that you're outputting. And I feel like that has been the biggest sort of shift. And I think the other shift has been confidence. I think my confidence has been developing leaps and bounds since I became a business owner. Like, I don't think I was this confident talking to people like 6 years ago. I was a very, very different person then. There was a shy part of me, which weirdly enough, people don't associate that word with me anymore. They every time I say, yeah, I am a little bit shy, and they're like, you're not. But I feel like that is also part of branding, is knowing what parts of you want to advertise, and then what parts of you want to internalize and develop. So the fact that people don't see me as that anymore, like that has been a huge shift in my personal brand.
And that's obviously been something that can be quite playful as well. It's not something that necessarily has to be, a journey that feels, oh God, this is quite a hard thing. It's something that sometimes you stop, reflect, and like, do you remember when? It's those moments, isn't it? It's quite enlightening. Barta means storytelling.
Yes.
So what role does storytelling play really in building a brand?
The important thing to remember about stories is the best comparison I can draw is, when you think back to your favorite movies or your favorite books, like the lines, there are certain lines or dialogues that really stand out to you. And you might want to bookmark them. Like they're just sort of imprinted in your mind for years. Like you will never forget, like the lyrics to your favorite song, for example. And I feel like the best brands do that. Like you don't realize the kind of subliminal messaging some of these brands have in your everyday life. Like if you think about Coca-Cola, like one of their biggest messaging is open happiness. And you don't realize, you open that first bottle of Coke and you take a sip, if you're a Coke drinker, obviously. But it actually does make you happy. Like, that burst of sugar actually does make you happy. And it was genius, whoever came up with that little tagline of open happiness. And then they started building all their marketing around it, to the point where now people look forward to their Christmas ads because it makes people happy. Like just having that look forward to it, it's become a part of their festive season. And that's what good brands do. Like they start to settle into your subconscious because of their messaging. People have started to associate brands with logos, but what they don't realize is that you won't remember logos as much as you remember the feeling that you get when you look at that logo. And that's what I try to do with every client that I work with. So it always starts at the beginning. We do a very intense strategy workshop with every client. Sometimes it goes to about, I think the longest one I've had so far is about 5 hours long. We start to dig into their story, their values, their audience, their biggest pipe dreams, because once you start articulating those pipe dreams, they don't start feeling that far fetched anymore. it's supposed to be about getting to the heart of who you are and why they're doing what they're doing. There has to be something you love about your business, right? That's why you've started it. So let's get back down to those details and let's remind yourself of why you are doing your business. And then often during those conversations, they'll say something off the cuff that completely and perfectly captures their essence. And they don't even realize they're saying it. They don't realize that they're actually saying things that they should be saying to their ideal customer. And my role in that equation is to capture those moments, write them down, refine them, turn them into intentional messaging that they can then use everywhere. And then that becomes their brand tagline. We'll use that strategy document as a way to formulate their website copy that is going beyond the SEO keywords and stuff. So it really does become very special for me to see that messaging carve out online and in their marketing and in their branding and in their taglines and in their logos and things like that. So when a brand has those lines that people start to remember, it stops being about their logos and their visual identity. It will become something that people feel. It will become something that people actually resonate with on a very deeply emotional level. And then that's when you know that you're gonna do well as a business, because then it no longer becomes about just selling your services. It will actually be about building relationships with the people that you're trying to sell to. And then it's fine if you get one customer, but then if that customer comes back, you've got a client. So that's the difference. You need to start thinking about getting clients and not customers.
You just need to spend the time, and particularly if you are new on this journey, spending that time before you're coming out to your market is so, so crucial, because it means you're getting that consistency as well. What's one piece of advice you wish you had at the start of your journey?
Oh, there's so much advice that I would give my 26-year-old self when I first launched the business. I think the main thing I would tell myself is just start. Don't worry about the details. Don't worry about the imperfect details, because I feel like the biggest trap we fall into is we're trying to build a perfect business in a very, very, very imperfect world. Like there isn't a perfect science to running a business, especially when there's so many exterior factors like the economy. There is politics, there is the kind of people, there is what kind of investment power people have to even invest in the kind of business that you want to start. If you let those exterior details start to rattle you, you will never be able to build something long term. Like you need to let the fear pass and you need to not get caught up in the details. The biggest lesson of what you need to do will come once you begin. And there were so many things I wanted to do with my business when I first started. And then as soon as I started, I realized I didn't have time for about 9 of the 10 things I had said to myself I was going to do. And then I just focused on that one that I really, really, really enjoyed. And 5 years later, here we are. And I feel like the other thing I would tell myself is listen to the people that have been there. I had a lot of people in my life that had started businesses. I took advice from none of them. Because they're like, no, I was like, you don't understand my industry. You don't understand my people. You don't understand the kind of work I want to do. But they all understand business. They all understand how to make money. And at the end of the day, if your business is not making money, it's a very, very expensive hobby. And there were so many things that I was told when I first started was, collaborate, network, white label. And I was like, no, I'm going to do things my way. And I did. And I came to the same conclusion 5 years later. So it's just about learning from the mistakes people have made, because they are speaking from experience. And I think the last thing I would tell myself is just don't listen to the stories you tell about yourself. I feel like the biggest stories we tell ourselves are all untrue. We tell ourselves we're not going to be enough. We don't have enough knowledge. We don't have enough education. We don't have enough power. All lies. They are absolute lies. I think the loudest stories are the ones that we tell ourselves, and they're always the negative ones. And I feel like if I had shown myself half the support I show my clients, I would be leaps and bounds ahead of where I am right now. So you need to be more supportive of yourself, cut yourself some more slack, do things as professionally and as ethically as you possibly can. Don't lose your heart while you're leading with your brain. but you have to recognize that there will be downfalls, there will be pitfalls, and you have to learn to navigate the lows. But yeah, that's all the advice I would give myself, and I'm still learning to give myself. I have to remind myself all of these things on a very, very, very daily basis, sometimes on an hourly basis.
We all have highs and lows. That happens whether you're employed or self-employed.
Yeah.
These things happen. But one of the things that I really like the idea of is, you touched on it earlier, is pivoting, it's resilience. It's being able to weather that
Yeah.
and having a plan to weather that as well. Like, just expect it to come. And I think, from one of the things that I have is, you get moments where you're busy, but then you get moments where you're not. But actually enjoying those moments, because it doesn't consistently stay that way.
Yes.
And that's the big benefit, right, of running your business, is having that time when you can actually be like, it's my direction, it's my choice for this. How do I want to spend it? And being reflective of that, I think it's really useful. Thank you so much for joining today and sharing your journey. If people want to reach out to you and talk more, how best can they get in touch with you?
So yeah, you can reach out in any really way, shape, or form. I will always, always, always connect back. It might take me a couple of days to come back, but I will always come back to you. And yeah, like I said, I'm here to build relationships. I think it's important to build relationships as opposed to just can get isolating to run your own business. So if people just want to come in and say hi, I'm all ears for that.
Love that. Thank you. I'm Lisa Burrell, and this is WANA Pod by WANA Learning. See you next time.